The Man Whore podcast is sponsored by Alt Playground. APG is more than just a place to find couples to swap with. Alt Playground is a lifestyle community for all non-monogamous and sexually adventurous people to connect and share. And you know I started a profile. Join me over at altplayground.net. That's altplayground.net. You always need new underwear. And you always love a good deal. Topic Wear is a luxurious undergarment brand that's partnered up with both myself and NBA star Serge Ibaka to leave your naughty parts soft and comfortable during this indefinite sexual off-season. Get 20% off your next order of undies with promo code MANWHORE at topicwear.com. That's code MANWHORE at topikwear.com. Now let's get to the show.
Welcome to the Man Whore Podcast.
Shout out to all those little Lotharios, the voluptuous vixens, and all them non-binary nymphs. This is Billy Presida, and you're listening to the Man Whore Podcast. Ooh, I was so nervous about getting non-binary nymphs correct, but we did it. What's up, everybody? How you doing? Are you horny? How's that libido doing right now during this strange time that feels like both quarantine and not quarantine, depending, what jurisdiction you live in? Let me tell you something. I'm not very horny. Might be weird to hear that from the guy who hosts something called a Man Whore podcast. Man and whore, two things that are supposed to be endlessly horny. Yet I'm not. My girlfriend's not a big fan of that, but I mean, she's supportive and she's not pushy. Just, I'm sure she would like to be getting dicked down a little bit more than she is. And I would like to be giving that to her. And yet, not that horny. I don't really know what the factor is. I don't know if it's like the despair of the state of our country. I don't know if it's my relationship to this new body that I'm in that feels both strong and heavy. I don't know if it's the incidentally monogamous lifestyle I've been leading, which I know is like super controversial for people listening to this pod, to be like, what? He's only having sex with like one person? Whoa, that's so perverted and deviant because it deviates from our norm. Yeah, no, I feel like one of the monos out there. Kind of for the most part. I've had opportunities and I just don't really have the drive to pursue them. Like, because it's not that I don't want to come. It's like I just don't feel like I have the human energy juice to connect with a new person in a semi-meaningful way enough to put my dick in them. And that's a very strange feeling to have. But as I'm told, it's valid. And it's valid for any sluts listening right now who aren't feeling super horny and are freaked out by it. It's okay. It will probably come back to us when things feel moderately more normal. I do enjoy sex with my girlfriend, and we are doing that. And that's, I pounced on her the other morning, and she very much enjoyed. But my overall, libido levels are quite down. I go on Reddit, and I'll be seeing some really hot scenes or posts where I'm like, ooh, I'm a great fit for that. That's normally really hot, and yet my junk's not moving at all. I look at it, I go that would be fun if I gave half a shit right now. And I don't. I just don't. How low has my libido been? My asshole has shrunk down to normal straight guy who's afraid of doing butt stuff, level of elasticity. I'm not even at my taking the medium butt plug. Used to be a breeze and now quite the struggle. What's wrong with me and my butthole? And trust me, it's been eagerly offered. But I haven't even wanted to have my butthole licked and I can't remember when. Gosh, I hope I'm not over rim jobs. I hope this is just a weird phase. And there's nothing wrong with it, people. So, last week, Franklin Veaux part 1. This is part 2. I got some pretty visceral reactions to last week's episode. Glad I did. I'm always interested in what y'all think about my guests on this program. I'm going to start off with a couple comments that came out in the Champagne Room. The Champagne Room is a members-only secret Facebook group for my Patreon supporters. This first comment comes from Margie. She wrote, "I was pretty shocked when the drama about Franklin came out. More Than Two was such an influential book for me. After reading the testimonies from his former partners, it was pretty clear that this was a legitimate issue. There was too much overlap in the stories for it to all be fake. Listening to this interview just solidified it for me. He just focused on Eve and completely ignored every time he brought up his other partners who shared similar stories. I was really disappointed to hear him dodge all responsibility." Josh shared, "I honestly just kept thinking that this must have been a really difficult interview. I know you weren't going for a gotcha type of interview, and that's not what the show was about, but at the same time, he was so evasive with his answers that was even frustrating for me as a listener. It was riveting, though, like getting a glimpse into the mind of a sociopath. It's probably not fair of me to say that about him, but it was a very different interview, and that is how his candor struck me." This next email comes from a listener, and I'm just going to go and read it because you'll understand why they want to be known as from a listener. "Quote unquote, from a listener. If you quote anything on the next episode, just because I'm afraid of him being a goddamn megalomaniac and coming after people. Sheesh. I think he's a sociopath 100%. He makes any situation to be someone else's fault, even though he admits he did things wrong. It's always because someone else did something to him to make him do those things. Or maybe there's some other mental illness there, like narcissistic personality disorder. But I'm not someone who's going to make a diagnosis because, well, I can't. He's a shark, 100% would avoid at all costs. I know there would be people who might criticize you for giving him a platform, but honestly, put this shit head on loudspeaker so that people stay the fuck away from him and know better. You handled yourself well. I'm not sure how you didn't kick him in the balls." Well, listener, I am not in the business usually of physically assaulting my guests, especially when that guest has just opened up and shared with me that he truly believes that he is the victim of some kind of physical violence from his past partner, Eve. And y'all can drag me for this if you want to. I do sincerely believe that, because I sat across from this guy for over 2 hours, and I got to witness these physical, visceral reactions. Franklin, if you're listening, I really hope you don't weaponize that and use that to manipulate further. And if you manipulated me, congrats. But I truly believe that something has gone down between him and Eve that is not on the up and up on her side either. And the way he would talk about the abuse, which he also talks about in this part 2 during this latter half of our conversation, I believe she's probably struck the dude in some fashion. But I don't know if that's repeated closed fists pummeling, throwing shit at him, or if it's one time she slapped him in the face and he deserved it. Because hey, sometimes we deserve a slap in the face. But he's the type of guy who seems like he would take that one slap and make it a big thing. Or maybe he really is a victim of Eve's. We don't know. And that's why I want to avoid a lot of the he said, she said, and allow them to tell their stories about each other off my platform, especially when I don't have both of them present. And that's a lot of the reason why I want to kind of take Eve out of it. Because Eve aside, there's multiple other women here that he doesn't seem to want to talk about. And, well, gosh, I want to talk about them. And this final email that I'm going to read comes from not one of his past partners, but we're just going to say someone who is very familiar with this entire situation. And her name, I'm just going to call her Katie. And the subject line was, wow, ... that interview. Katie writes, "Hi, Billy. I have to say that after listening to Franklin live for an hour, I'm actually physically ill. One of the things that it's difficult to catch when you're not deeply familiar with the testimonies and the backstory is the way that Franklin uses the experiences and stories of the women he's had relationships with. but flips them around and pretends he was victimized in the way he actually abused others. She wrote in parentheses, Darvo. I don't know what Darvo means. It's a weird thing that certain abusive, quote-unquote, male feminist cult figures do. And it sounds so plausible because the stories are, quote-unquote, real. They just aren't theirs. She continues, but I think you did a good job as an interviewer, and I thought you were really trying to get to the truth by pressing him on the testimony of all the women. Eve's testimony aside, which he kept trying to avoid engaging with. I also was impressed that you kept pushing him on his, is there a conspiracy or not nonsense. I look forward to the next episode. So, and there were some other responses about it too, and I appreciate everyone who wrote in and said some things. And if you want to, share your comments, your questions, your criticisms, you can also send your titties. Dick havers, you can send your dicks, but you gotta write Man Whore Podcast on it first. You can send any and all of that on over to manwhorepod@gmail.com. And if you want to, leave a comment in the weekly episode comment thread, then you gotta join up on Patreon so you can also be in the champagne room. And as Chris Rock once said, there is no sex in the champagne room. None. Oh, there's champagne in the champagne room, but you don't want champagne. You want sex. And there is no sex in the champagne room. And that is not a great way to advertise joining my Patreon by promising you not sex, but I'm a weird individual. And let's do the fan whore appreciation moment to cleanse the palate. Hey, this is the part of the podcast where I like to thank some of the members of my fan whore community on Patreon. And if you're not familiar, Patreon is a fabulous membership platform where you can gain access to yours truly, as well as private discussion groups with like-minded listeners and so much bonus content. Gosh, I've got over 100 bonus episodes available over there. And I want to thank some of the people who are supporting the show with their doll hairs. I want to give a shout out to Peter Ulin. Peter watched me get my hair cut when I was streaming it live in the champagne room. Oh gosh, when that beard came off, he did like the barber shaved the whole of my face until he got to the edge. And so the entire beard is just hanging off my face. And when he finally clipped that last part, it was like the Berlin Wall falling, but off my face. And instead of uniting a country, it just exposed my beautiful bare face to the world again. So, Peter, hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for being a member. And I want to give a shout out to Darren. Darren, all the way out in Australia. Gosh, can we trade presidents? Because, that might be cool. Presidents, am I thinking of New Zealand? New Zealand. I want New Zealand's president. At least for a month. Can we borrow her? She seems cool, and she seems like she takes shit seriously. But hey, Darren, Australia, very cool as well. And thanks for supporting the pod. You too can become a member and join us in the champagne room for as little as $2. All you gotta do is head on over to patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. That's Patreon, patreon.com/manwhorepodcast. I know I just told you all earlier that I'm not super horny, but I'm definitely still jerking off. And that's why I want to tell you about hotmovies.com. Yes, Hot Movies, that wonderful pay-per-minute porn site that makes it both an ethical and affordable way to #pay for some of your porn. Oh, they've got so much on there. They've got, videos and clips from all your favorite porn stars, all your favorite studios, all your favorite fetishes. If you're ever I don't know, Billy, are they going to have? Yes, they do. In fact, during my masturbatory sessions recently, I've been kind of, am I admitting this? I've been getting really into some Futanari porn. Okay, Futa porn, Futa, if you're familiar. I've been on the Futanari subreddit a little bit, stroking the cock, doing the things, covering myself in all sorts of oils. I don't know why. I don't know why these women with gigantic penises that are exaggeratively large enough that this isn't actually a real scenario. I don't know why that's tickling me. But gosh, those high femmes with 4-foot cocks seem to be getting it done. So wait, but Hot Movies, could they possibly have some Futa porn that I should be watching with my minutes that I have? Oh, let's just see. I'm going to type in FUTA, enter. My search resulted in 3 matches. Look at that. You've got predatory photographer, Fuda. Ooh, I don't know. Predatory, I don't like it. That word in my porn. But there's Fuda RX, like a prescription. I got a fever. And the only cure is more Fuda. More Fuda? I need more Fuda. But hey, I click on Fuda RX. It comes from the All Her Love studio, starring Chad White, Kenna James, and Cadence Lux. I guess her clit in this is real world. Normally Fuda is like cartoons, but in this one I think Kenna James, her clit, quote unquote, enlarges large enough to be like a penetrative penis while she still has a pussy. Anyways, this is just like a little taste of what we've got over here at Hot Movies. And they're going to give you 20 bonus minutes on top of any package you sign up for when you use promo code MANWHORE at hotmovies.com. Don't forget, use the promo code MANWHORE. Let them know that I sent you. I feel adequately cleansed enough that I can now say, okay, Franklin Veaux Part 2. Who's ready for it? You know, it was alluded to in a lot of the emails and responses to Part 1. But yeah, the tone of his answers are just like very defensive. And there are a lot of opportunities, and I feel like I laid him up some softballs. I really just tried to find ways to phrase things that allowed him to just take some responsibility for some things. That I feel like could have been progress. But instead, it was just like very, very defensive, very much deflecting. I mean, you know, this guy could read me a physics textbook and it would sound defensive. One of the things that really stood out to me that made me think was he really seems uncomfortable accepting the responsibility of being a polyamorous influencer, of being an authority. He doesn't seem to want the responsibility that comes with it. Yeah, at the same time, I mean, there is something there that I think he kinda, just a little bit at least, enjoys it. It's very similar to when I joke about like I'm just a comedian with a fuck show. I'm like, I recognize that although I am just a comedian with a fuck show, there's like a little responsibility I have to accept if I want to continue doing the show like this, if I want to continue asking y'all to pay me for my work, if I want to continue, enjoying some of the fruits of that labor. And so he seems to want to abdicate the responsibility, but like he also doesn't. And that really stood out to me. So I don't know. It's up to you to decide what you think about Franklin, what you think about all this situation. I do think if you want to really deep dive into this, you should read Luisa's website over at polyamory-metoo.com. And I also do think you should read some of Franklin's writing too. But for most of you, you probably are just going to form your opinion based on, the roughly 2 hours of conversation I've put out there. So let's go wrap it up. Let's let you get the other half of this chat with the co-author of More Than Two, Franklin Veaux. Support for the Man Whore podcast comes from altplayground.net. The place for your next non-monogamous adventure. You know it. Oh, we love APG, and we love it for all the different things it offers. A new module is actually just launched over at APG. Forums. Yeah. Message board. Yeah. You know, look, forums, they're not the sexiest thing, but it does go to show how well-rounded APG wants to be as a lifestyle hub. It's not just a place to go meet like-minded people to fuck. Although it very much is partly that. But they also want to be a community. They want to be a resource. And one of the ways that you're able to form a community are through forums and message boards. It's just a safe and fun place for members to share thoughts and ideas on an array of topics. Just another resource for you to immerse yourself in all things non-monogamy. APG continues to create a space for open-minded people to connect, and I want you to come over there and join me. Join us. All right, I'm on there. I got my own page, the Man Whore Podcast page. You can go there. We even have a community, the Fan Whore Playground. And once I figure out how the forums work, I'm sure you're going to see me in there too. So come be a part of this. Come get started on your next non-monogamous adventure at altplayground.net. That's altplayground.net. Now let's get to the show. What was your dating life like in in like high school, college?
I did not lose my virginity until I was 19. I did not date anybody in high school. I dated a couple of people in college. I want to say three people in college, and Celeste being one of them.
I was curious where your parents they stay together or?
Oh yeah. My parents just celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary. Either last week or next week. I don't remember which.
I'm curious, where the instability was in your life.
There never was any. I've always had a very stable life. I would not describe my life as unstable at all.
I don't know. I was just curious if the want for stability came from something that was.
I see what you mean.
I mean, look, because reading about you, like I said, it read like you always had a lot of partners. I was like, oh man, popular guy. And then they'd be like, he's very charismatic. I was like, I can't wait to meet him. Then I want to know where I want to see. I want to experience the charisma that gets all these partners. But I was like. Something.
Dude, I'm a goofy-looking middle-aged guy.
You are a goofy-looking middle-aged guy. I'm glad you said it. Then I can just agree with you. No, but there's something where someone has all these partners. It makes me think about the why. Because I have to think about that with me. I have to think okay, why am I opening Tinder right now? Am I doing this because I'm looking to date a new person? Am I just horny, want to fuck somebody tonight? Why am I horny? Am I actually horny, want to fuck someone? Or do I want to fuck someone because I need someone to call me pretty today? Why do I need that? Did I get on the scale this morning and set a number I didn't like? What's going on with me that I need all of this? I do not believe that non-monogamy is a symptom of stuff. I do think that sometimes when I'm seeking out, extra people, I have to ask myself why before I'm proceeding. That's how I've been learning to try to be healthier in my dating life. I was curious. I was curious about all the partners.
If you look at
because there are also a lot of them are all long distance, which made me go okay, so what? You get one, you guys declare yourself sweeties, and then she goes home and you see each other once a year?
Well, a lot of partners I've had didn't start off as long distance, but then one of us moved, and so they became long distance. But if you look back at the very start of my romantic and dating life, way back when I was 19, I usually will take a new partner about, I want to say maybe every 6 years or so, maybe every 7 years. Sometimes less often than that, actually. So it's not there's a constant revolving door. I don't do casual sex.
Okay. So just for because I'm just trying to do math in my head. So, and I didn't want to focus too much on the Survivor pod, but just would you consider, except for the pet lesbians, would everyone in that Survivor pod, do you consider them having been past partners?
I actually stopped reading the stories after I hit one that I thought was absolutely positively 100% false from begin to end. And so I was just like, you know what? This is ridiculous. Okay.
And how are the partners now? I mean, you have, I don't want to say how they're going. Obviously, they're going well if they're still dating you through all that shit. I mean, that's a bond, right? I mean, that how did all this affect the relationships you were in?
Yeah, wow. So one of the complaints that was made about me is Franklin isolates his partners from each other. He doesn't want them to talk to each other. Mm-hmm. My current partners laughed about that. They actually talk to each other on their own Facebook Messenger. There was some hilarity when they saw that claim.
Do you think that could be true for you in the 90s, 2000s?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, not at all. And in fact, while I was with my ex-wife, one of our rules that we had was that she had to know and like anybody that I dated.
Ex-wife Celeste, right?
Ex-wife Celeste, yes.
I'm just keeping track here. Like I said, you're a popular guy. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the different cows, man. But with the Celeste thing,
I gotta say that calling women cows, not cool.
Cows?
Did you say cows?
Gals.
Okay,
Gals.
I'm sorry. I
cows?
Completely misheard you.
Oh man,
wow.
I'd get canceled all over again. But what about, there was a story about Celeste, like you and someone who went by Amber wanting to go to Boston, and you go to Celeste. The way that it was portrayed by both Celeste and Amber in the testimonials are like, he kind of just came to me. He was like, we're going to go to Boston. Come if you want. And I'm like, isn't that your wife?
That's not the way I remember it. Okay. That may be the way they remember it now. That is not the way I remember it.
So what does it say to you that two people, neither of whom are Eve? Remember, I'm trying my best.
I get it.
I'm trying my best to remove her from it, acknowledging that there's shit we all don't know about. But it's like, what does it say that two women remember something very similarly and you remember very differently?
Amber has the stories that I do not believe are true are Amber's stories. So I look at those and I'm like, that really isn't the way I remember it.
But then if Celeste says a similar thing too, so
it is totally possible that my memory is wrong. That's why I say it didn't happen that way.
I guess why I asked before, we didn't really get to go too much into, but it's like, how did all of this stuff affect your current relationships?
And it's, I have been trying not to rely a whole lot on my partners. Obviously, to some extent I am. They have been very, very supportive. Several of my partners were there for many of the things that are alleged to have happened and also don't see it quite the way that perhaps it's being portrayed, but that's okay. I've been more looking to people like my therapist and my pod. And the reason for that is that I want to rely on people who are outside of the situation because that way I feel like I can get a clearer idea about what's happening.
And I'll tell you this, I spoke to Elizabeth and her thing of all the things I read, hers seemed the most reasonable. Dr. Elizabeth Sheff. Hers seemed the most reasonable thing. She seemed to, her point of view seemed to be, would I date this guy? No. This guy seems like he probably has some shitty patterns of behavior in his dating life, but is he a monster? No. Is he an abuser? No. That was, I took a similar take. Worst case scenario in my mind was he's the worst boyfriend you could have without being a criminal. I mean, did you not notice like things going wrong consistently?
I noticed that not all of my relationships survived.
Sure.
I noticed that a lot of them that failed because I either didn't step up and wasn't an active part of the relationship, or sometimes made poor choices, choosing to date two monogamous people at the same time. I don't know what I was thinking there. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. So what I have taken forward from this is I need to be a lot more transparent in all of my relationships with all of my partners. And I need to be more conscious about who I choose as a partner and how I relate with them. I need to be better at setting boundaries. And this is another thing that I'm going through with my, my therapist, because one of the biggest problems I think that led to the relationship between Eve and I being as toxic as it was the fact that I am very poor at setting boundaries and she's very poor at respecting them.
Do you think you're also poor at respecting boundaries?
No, I do not. And I'll give you an example. The first night that I spent the night overnight with Eve, while I was asleep, she got up and she dug through all of my stuff, my suitcase.
It's very interesting you go there because you say Eve's bad at respecting boundaries. I respond with the question, do you think you struggle with respecting boundaries? You say no. Let me give you an example. And then the example is how she doesn't respect boundaries. It would be helpful if I could it's something I'm noticing.
It would be helpful if I could actually finish that example.
Okay.
So, and this is one of the things that I've talked about with my therapist. Okay. Now, this is a boundary violation, and a person with good boundaries would say, this is a boundary violation. Why did you do this? I didn't do that. I didn't do that because I am shitty at setting boundaries. I didn't recognize a boundary violation when it was done to me. On the other side of that same coin, though, I am almost pathologically averse to crossing somebody's boundaries to the point where I won't follow up even if somebody doesn't explicitly set a boundary. Like, I feel very uncomfortable questioning people, pushing people, probing people. Like, I won't even go so far as to ask, so where were you last night? If somebody said, oh yeah, I'll see you, last night, and then didn't show. I am so afraid of violating somebody's boundaries that I don't even ask questions like that.
I'm going to put words in your mouth for a second because it just sounds like what you've been describing a lot, but standing up for oneself. Does that sound?
I am shitty at standing up for myself.
Do you think you don't do that for fear of upsetting the other person they leave?
Not for upsetting the other person and they leave, but for being a person who does a lot of things that I find toxic. So in 1992, I was dating a woman who I call in Ruby in my my memoir. Mm-hmm. And she started dating a friend of mine, and I became extremely jealous. It was the first time in my life I'd ever dealt with jealousy, and it sucked. And I didn't recognize it for what it was. I didn't realize that I was being jealous. Mm-hmm. And so what I did was I kept going through everything that we would do at night. Like I would go through the entire day, every night, looking for things that she was doing wrong, things that I could accuse her of, things that I could say, see, this is this thing that you're doing to me that's hurting me. How dare you harm me? How dare you do this to me? And naturally, she broke up with me because she was a reasonable human being, and that's what reasonable human beings do when they're treated that way. And then it took me a couple of years to step back and say, holy shit, I was completely in the wrong there. I fucked up a perfectly good, healthy relationship because I was jealous, and that jealousy inspired me to blame her for harming me when the thing that was actually harming me was my own jealousy. I never want to do that again. I never want to be that person again. And so I will step away from doing anything that even looks remotely like that. I will not stand up for myself just because I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be that person who is accusatory. I don't want to be that person who's controlling. I don't want to be that person who's possessive. And so I don't step up.
Were you this passive of a kid?
That's a good question. I actually don't know. I didn't have a lot of friends as a kid until I hit high school. So like in middle school, there were 8 people, including me, in my class. And it was the biggest class that school had ever seen in like a decade.
8 kids?
8. The town
the fuck town did you live in?
Venango, Nebraska. There were 242 people there.
When did you finally find like yourself socially, man?
Oh, high school.
High school?
So my parents moved from Venango to Florida. And I went from a town of 242 people to a high school that had like 1,000 kids in it. It was like, holy shit, culture shock. And all of a sudden, there were other people who liked computers and didn't like football.
There's almost an excitement. Like, it's like, oh, I might find my people here.
Yeah. And I was like, and so in high school, I was suddenly a lot more social. But in middle school, I was like, there are 8 kids in my class, including me, and 7 of them, which is all of the people who are not me, don't like me because I don't play sports ball. So yeah. So high school was when I actually started becoming social.
What was your first relationship? Like you're Franklin Veaux, you're the fucking poly guy.
Yeah, my first relationship was actually with Celeste.
Really?
Yes. She was the first person I ever dated. And, you know, at the time, I actually truly believed that nobody else in the world wasn't monogamous. I believed that I would never, ever, ever meet somebody who wasn't monogamous. There was no language for it. There was no word for it. There was certainly no such thing as a polyamorous group or anything like that.
How did you know you weren't monogamous when there wasn't the language for it?
Because when I was in middle school, and I actually talk about this in my memoir too.
We're talking about Game Changer, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was in middle school, my English teacher, Mrs. Newth, God bless her, would read stories to the class. And she read this story, and I don't even remember what the story was called, that was about this princess, and she was being wooed by 2 princes, and she had to choose one. And this was like this big thing in this story. And I was like, castles are big. There's room for all 3 of them there. Why does she have to choose? So I was never like, oh yeah, I'm going to find somebody who's all mine, and they're all going to be mine and just mine. And they're, you know, we're going to go off and live happily ever after. I was never like that.
When did you first discover the concept of non-monogamy and that there are other people out there like that?
1996.
What'd you read?
I was writing on the internet and somebody sent me an email and said, hey, did you know that there is a polyamory support group in Tampa right by you? And I was like, there's a what?
What? A poly, huh? What is this? Right?
Yeah. And I had the word polyamory then. I found the word polyamory in 1992. So I knew there were other people who were like me. But they were like, oh yeah, there's a polyamory support group. And I was like, a who, what?
Uh-huh. There are other ones.
And, honestly,
how did it feel to finally hear that there's a group, hear there are others?
It was amazing. And I went, actually, Celeste and I both went. And Celeste was like, I don't know about all these weirdos, but I was like, wow, oh my God, these are like, tribe of my people.
But how'd you pitch it to her? Because she's monogamous at the time.
She was monogamous at the time, but she was also still having other lovers. So she had other lovers all through our relationship. And that's the weird thing. And I believe, you say, oh yeah, you met somebody who was a swinger. If I was into casual sex, if I would have been a swinger, Celeste and I might still be together. Because she was always down with let's have sex with other people.
She was non-monogamous. She wasn't polyamorous.
Yeah, it was always I don't want you to fall in love. In fact, for the first couple of years of our relationship, we had a rule. You're not allowed to fall in love. When it happened, I botched it. I was like, okay, so I'm in love. I've just broken the rule. What should I do? Yeah. I'll go out to lunch with the person I've fallen in love with and Celeste and tell Celeste that I've fallen in love.
You did that in front of... You did it in front of, was it Elaine? Or just a different person?
No, that's a different person.
Okay, so you brought the new love to lunch with your current wife who said, don't fall in love.
And said, I fell in love. Yes.
With this woman right next to or across from you.
Yes. And, you look at that now and I'm like, wow, that was really profoundly stupid and more than a little bit insensitive.
I'm glad you recognize that part because I also agree that it'd be quite a bit unfair.
Yes, and that is not something that I will ever do again. But again, at the same time, I also will never agree to a rule on what I'm allowed to feel or not feel again.
Sure, yeah. And like I said, I'd like to give her the benefit of the doubt when she says don't fall in love, she truly means, I don't want you loving other people. So if you do fall in love with someone, please break it off entirely so that it's no longer the threat. Because sometimes people simplify the language and stuff. But that's an early one. That's such a common one where people open up relationships reluctantly. They're like, the love is the thing that makes the relationship secure, and they don't want threatened by sharing it.
Yep.
When did you realize that you were no longer some dude named Franklin Veaux on LiveJournal, that you were Franklin Veaux? I know you don't believe you put yourself in that position, and I'll be like, yeah, sure, you were just a guy posting. But at some point, other people perceive you as Franklin Veaux and not just Tacit. Was that your username?
Tacit, yeah.
Whatever. So when did you realize people had you on some sort of pedestal, even if it was just for advice stuff?
Interesting question. I've always really struggled to accept that because that's not how I see myself.
And
probably about the time that I started dating Eve, I think, and I should have realized it sooner.
That's like late 2000s, like 2010, something like that, right? Okay.
Yeah. And I really should have realized it sooner. I think I should have realized it when my ex in Chicago told me, if I knew that you were famous before we started dating, I wouldn't have dated you. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm famous?
Come on, man. Really?
I don't think of myself as famous.
No. But is it that you don't look? I am definitively not famous, but I have people who call me famous. I know what they mean, but I'm like, that's also wrong. But there's got to be a part of you, like, look, tens of millions, whatever it is, like at some point, it really took that long for you to accept,
yes. And my Portland partner calls me demi-famous.
Okay, but how about influential? Do you think that would have been more fair word?
I think that's fair. I don't like it, but I think it's fair.
Do you not think of yourself as influential, or do you not believe that you were influential?
I don't like the idea that people see me that way. What I would prefer is if people find useful things in what I say, then they use them. And if they don't, then they don't.
And at what point does that become, hey, I'm just a guy giving some advice to, like, I am a sphere of influence? I guess
as soon as a critical number of people start believing that the things you have to say are interesting. And I have no idea what that critical number of people is, but...
Would you give yourself any advice back then? Franklin Veaux, late 90s, early 2000s, is discovering LiveJournal, starts giving this advice stuff, and you start seeing people are digging what you're saying. Would you go back now to that time period and give yourself some advice?
Oh, yeah. Tons of advice.
Yeah. Like what?
Set better boundaries. Not just in your relationships, but also with people who you are talking to and interacting with online.
We'll use the term fans very loosely.
Fans very loosely. Yeah. Never flirt with a fan. never, always be cautious about people who see you as somebody who is influential and want to date you because of that, or people who see the things that you've written and assume that they know who you are. Yeah. Be very cautious about the way you interact with people who you only interact with online or at conventions and conferences or whatever, because they are real people. Remember that they are real people. Remember to treat them compassionately. Don't sit there behind a keyboard and go off on people. That's really not okay. That's not cool at all. Remember that people have experiences that are different from yours, and that's cool. Remember that people don't have as much experience as you do, and don't make assumptions about what they're capable of. And this is something that actually my Portland partner has talked to me about since all this shit happened. She said, you have a problem. You assume that people are stronger than they are. You assume that people are more capable than they are, so you don't always take good care of me because you don't see the places where I might be weak.
I do. Now, that's something I definitely agree with, and I could see through all the writings, including the writings you would do on LiveJournal long before, there were testimonial stuff out there, because I could see someone would say I'm feeling insecure like this way. And I've read your words. So when I'm paraphrasing, I'm confident how I'm paraphrasing, and that it would be basically, well, don't be insecure, or that's silly. You shouldn't feel this way.
I've always tried not to tell people how to feel.
But
I've
you
tried
did
very
do
hard not to do that.
And I'm telling you this as an objective third party who's just trying to read what was going down, because I'm always skeptical of everybody. I'm skeptical of fucking everybody until they show me stuff. So if they say Franklin said this and that, I'll be like, all right, can we see some receipts type of stuff? I'm a fan of receipts, and I read the stuff, and you were telling them in these posts how to feel, and I was trying to think what would make a grown man talk to 15, 16, 17-year-old girls that way on the LiveJournal. And what I thought was, he's left braining it so hard, he's forgetting about the humanity, and the humanities where a lot of the weaknesses are. So I believe you thought everyone is capable of just being confident.
And that is something that I'm very conscious of now, is that, if you look at anything that I've written recently, I'm very careful not to tell people, don't feel this.
I'm surprised you're answering any advice right now.
What I will do is I will say, is the thing that you're feeling helpful to you? And if not, is it something that you want to change? And if you do want to change, are there tools you can use to get there? Which is a very different thing from don't feel this way.
Did you question whether or not you should still give advice?
Of course I did. And I stopped giving advice for a while. Yeah. At least on relationships.
Because Louis C.K. thought he went away for a while. And we were like, dude, it was a few months.
And then, And then people said, hey, people started actually asking me questions again. And I'm like, well, if people find value in the things that I have to say, cool. But if they don't,
sure.
Cool.
But do you think that they were all aware of what was going on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
What makes you think that?
It's been all over Quora.
Okay.
And I don't think there's anybody left in the world at this point who is not aware of what's going on. I mean, you'd have to...
In the world?
Well, anybody who has heard of me has heard of this. Let's put it that way.
That's more fair, because, hey, from one not famous person to another, hey, man, I've had a lot of people be like, who? When I've said, I'm going to talk to this guy, Franklin Veaux. Like,
yeah.
what? Yeah.
Anybody who's aware of me is aware of what's going on.
That's a fairer way to put it. And you think everyone on Quora is aware of what's going on?
Yeah. There was somebody who actually, and this is still an ongoing thing.
Yeah, the impersonator?
The impersonator on Quora, yes.
I was relieved that didn't become a big fight, that it seems like the other side, again, we're removing Eve from everything, that mostly the other side believes that there was someone impersonating stuff. That's what I've gathered. And I was very relieved that didn't have to be its own separate fight, because that was ridiculous.
There is somebody who is impersonating me. In fact, 2 weeks ago, somebody set up an account impersonating me on Quora, and in a span of less than 2 hours posted 580 links to Eve's page. So yes, people on Quora know.
Yeah. you were sharing some tips you would give yourself at the moment of realization that you have become an influential figure. We left off on the, don't assume people are stronger than they are. Was there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
Don't date fans.
Don't date fans.
Don't date fans. Don't flirt with people. There's actually a word for this. It's called parasociality. And it's a psychological term, and it means the feeling that somebody has when they read a person's writing, or they see a person in a movie, or they read a book by a person and assume that they know that person.
Yeah.
But that to that person, you're just a complete stranger.
I mean, dude,
so it's a one-sided intimacy.
I overshare my life on the internet for the last 6 years. I 100% get that.
Yes.
The amount of people who go like, I just feel like I know everything about you. Personally, for me, it's a relief, because if a listener's like, hey, I'm in New York City, can I buy you a drink? I'll be like, sure. And then I can just sit there and listen, because I'm like, there's nothing I should have to say here. You know all of it. You heard the show. I can just sit there and like ask them questions to get to know them. So
when you meet somebody for a drink, that's awesome.
Yeah.
If that person then wants to date you, that's a little fucked up.
More Than Two is 2014, 2015, right? Something like that.
2014.
Do you believe you've always practiced what you preached in that book?
I believe that I have always tried to. I don't believe that I've always succeeded. I do fall short. I believe that book is a pretty good representation of what I try to be.
Is there anything in that book that you would change right now if you had to do an update?
That's a really sore spot, because Eve has been doing updates behind my back, and she actually did an update just to slam her ex-girlfriend. So no, I don't think that's kind of updating is cool, and I'm really sensitive about wanting to update it.
There's a new version available somewhere right now?
Yes, there are new printings that are coming out all the time, because the printings keep selling out, and you can look at different printings. You can look at the copyright page and see what the printing number is. Okay. There's a strip along the bottom that says 1098765543, whatever. Sure. If it goes down to 1, that's the first printing. If it ends at 2, that's the second printing.
That's what those fucking numbers mean?
That's what those numbers mean. Yes, that's the printing. With 10? They don't always start with 10. Sorry. If the publisher thinks that it's going to be really popular, they might start with 15.
Right. So
they often
whatever
start
the last
with 10.
number is, that's the print number?
Whatever the last number is.
Fuck.
Yeah, because you can use the plates, and you just mask off the number when you do the next printing.
Those numbers were nonsense, man. You just blew my mind.
So if you look at the different printing numbers, you will see changes. And some of those changes are made as using More Than Two as a place to attack Eve's ex-girlfriend.
And she hasn't needed your permission to make and reprint those changes?
That is a really interesting legal question that is not yet resolved, and it's something that I'm in conversation with my lawyer about.
Just for because that's a very tangible thing. Is there, do you happen to know like a chapter title that if I went down to Powell's right now and I could find a more recent printing, I would assume maybe a 2019 or 2018.
So find a printing now and find a first printing and go to, it's somewhere around page 96. It might actually be on page 96.
Something like that.
There's a story that says Eve's story. And in Eve's story, and it's actually walled off with a little line, it's a story about her ex-girlfriend, who she's called Kira. And she added 4 words to that story just to slam her ex. In the first printing, these words are not there, but in the second printing, or starting in, I think, the 5th printing, it says, whose upbringing was British. And the reason that she did that was that after she broke up with Eve, went on to Facebook, and she talked about how she had grown up. She's Middle Eastern. How she had grown up, and how growing up in the Middle East, and specifically in Saudi Arabia, affected the way that she does relationships and communicates. And Eve was so mad about that. And she was like, she went to a British school while she was growing up in Saudi Arabia. So damn it, she's British. I'm going to put in the book that she's British.
I mean, as someone who does roast battles from time to time, I will say that's the lamest slam on the next one could do.
There was I actually talked to my therapist about this. There's an implication there that is really, really toxic. And that is, I can't bear that a person who is not like a white Westerner accused me of abusing them, and then talked in public about how cultural differences express themselves in relationships, because that makes me look like I'm insensitive to cultural differences. I'm going to make sure the world knows that that's not the case.
Like I said, whose upbringing was I was so excited for a better slam. Like I said, because
it's not a good slam, but it's there just to discredit a Facebook post. She changed the book to discredit a Facebook post.
But if anyone, like I said, someone goes to Pals right now and buys,
nobody would ever notice
so
that.
Then is it even really a slam?
It's aimed at a specific person with the intent of discrediting and undermining that person's story. I would call that a slam, and it's not
her
aimed,
intent. How?
Because she said it. When she made that change, she was very explicit about this.
She told you, she said, hey, I'm going to add this in the book.
Correct.
And fuck, so I'm going to add this in the book.
Correct.
She said that in person, or she said that?
She said that to me in person, yes.
Okay. My original question had a lot more to do with advice, strategy, and tips on polyamory.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything in that book you would change now?
Advice, strategies, and tips on polyamory. Yes, I would put more in there about how to assert boundaries, because that's something I'm really weak at. And that has gotten me into trouble.
Is there anything in that book you feel like can be weaponized for someone who wants to be more manipulative or abusive?
There is nothing that you can say that cannot be weaponized. There's a quote about that, and it was from some German dude about... What was the quote? Something like, give me 2 sentences by the most honest of men, and I will find something in those 2 sentences to hang him.
I don't know that quote, but I believe you.
There's a quote about that. Yes. If you write a 150,000 word book, there will be something in there that somebody can weaponize. There will be something in there that somebody can manipulate.
But is there anything in particular in the book that you think is maybe more apt for that?
The sections on communication, I've been told, have been weaponized by people. What we tried to do was we tried to say, here are ways for you to communicate authentically and with integrity with other people. And we've been told that people say, see that this book says this is how you should communicate with me instead of how I should communicate with you. So they actually use the things in the book as you need to do this because more than 2 says, rather than I can make my relationships better if I do this. Mm-hmm. And that's where that weaponization and manipulation comes from, is when you start seeing the advice in the book as not, these are things that maybe can help me, but these are things that I'm going to demand that you do.
Mm. I was curious when you emailed me back agreeing to do the show, because I hit you up as a long shot. But I was like, I'm on a road trip. I'm going to be in Portland. Why not ask if there was a time? Why did you agree to speak with me today?
Because I've finally reached the point where my lawyer says that it's unlikely that Eve is going to settle. And Eve has tried very hard to silence me. And one of the things that she did when she put her pod together was she said, I don't want you to speak to anybody in public about any of this unless you run it through my pod first. And this is classic silencing behavior. And this is the same thing that she did to her ex-girlfriend. She's trying to silence me. And I finally decided that I'm not going to be silenced anymore, that I'm going to tell my story.
And why not just do a blog post?
And I'm going to do that as well.
All right. Were you already planning to do something like that?
Yeah.
Or were you sitting there waiting for my email?
No, I was not waiting for your email. In fact, I'd already started working on that. And then you emailed as right when I was making that decision that I'm not going to be silent anymore. Mm-hmm. And so you hit me at just exactly the right moment in time. Mm-hmm. Like 2 weeks earlier, I probably would have declined.
Okay. I still think that if you and Eve were not like the people who wrote the New Testament of the Poly Bible,
oh,
I don't
think the New Testament. Oh,
Jesus. sorry to say it, dude.
I hate when people say that.
That's that. But you know what? Great power. Look, people. I jokingly will say I'm just a comedian with a fuck show, but I do have to recognize that. My oversharing online has apparently resonated with some people and helped some people.
Yep.
I like to think that most of the help people have gotten have been actually from the guests because, again, I'm a fake smart person. I'm just a comic. I like to think I bring on people who have shared better things and taught better things. But there is a responsibility at the end of the day. Like you are an influence in the world of polyamory, whether you want to be or not. If you want to not be if you truly didn't want to be an influence anymore, you'd stop giving advice on LiveJournal. You'd stop giving advice on Quora. Because you know that the reason why you were kind of put on this pedestal is because of the posts. So if you truly wanted to not be in that limelight, you'd stop doing that. And I'm not begrudging you for doing it. That's fine if you want to be, but like let's at least acknowledge and accept what it is. Like there's a part of you at least that likes being on that pedestal.
I don't actually like being on the pedestal. I like interacting with people, and I don't post online because 1,000 or 1,000,000 people read me. I post because I enjoy doing it. And people look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're so full of shit when you say that." No, actually, if I had 10 readers, I'd still post the same amount.
You could make a new account, not be Franklin Veaux, and do the same thing.
And what makes you think I haven't?
Wouldn't be put. I don't know. I don't know that, but it's like you could do that, and
there
then
are places where I post that I am not Franklin Veaux. You know, so I mean, this is not my only. I do not have just a footprint in the poly world, and actually, I talk about a lot of other things that are unrelated to polyamory. And more lately, in fact, I am building new communities completely outside of polyamory.
Do you see yourself taking a step back from the role, whether you want it or not, that you have in poly? Do you see yourself taking a step back from all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I have not tried to do any poly conferences. I have not attended any poly conferences.
Have they been hitting you up? No
actually,
offense.
You would be surprised.
I would be surprised.
Yes.
I got into a Twitter fight and I got canceled for panels 4 years later. So it's
yes, but you would be surprised. There are still people who are hitting me up for poly stuff. I am tending to decline those. I am taking a step back from all of that stuff.
Is there just I'm curiosity? Is there? Can you name?
No, I am not going to name any of the. No, I am not going to name any of the people.
Okay. Would you name one off mic if I just wanted to check and just to fact check?
No, I am not going to name any of the people. I'm not going to drag anybody into this.
I don't want to drag nobody. I was just curious if I were to hit someone up, be like. Off the record, all of that. Hey, did you guys ask Franklin to do the thing? I'd be. But curious.
Anyway, yes. So the answer to your question is yes.
Okay. How does it make you feel to start taking a step back?
Well, honestly, it's a little shitty to have somebody strip you of the community that you helped to build, and that actually I think was her intent. It seems like
you still have the community. I mean, you have people who do not like you, but there's still clearly from your own mission, like plenty of people on Quora. There's these conferences. There's still people who want your opinion, who want your voice. You still have community. So
yes, I don't have nearly as much as I used to, but yes, I do still have community.
Mm-hmm. So then how does it feel to be potentially taking that step back? Because I don't want it to be phrased as Eve took away community if you still have community. I think that's a little disingenuous.
Okay. Yes, that is correct. It feels a little shitty. It feels appropriate right now. And it feels like something I need to do.
I would agree with that. I think that would be good for a lot of people, including you. When you said, "Hey, I'm taking," this is gonna be that scheduling thing. That might be tricky. I got an exam for graduate school. Right?
I'm finishing my degree.
I thought that was great. I genuinely, sincerely read that. I was like, "Good for Franklin. That seems like a good, productive thing. He's finding this other place that you were already had knowledge on from what I've heard and stuff, but that you were potentially seeking another path that you find valuable and interesting, where you can still provide value to people."
I've always done that, and I've been doing that nonstop.
Right. It seemed like a good self-improvement thing to do that was completely unrelated to this world, and I thought that was a productive thing. So I was pleased to hear that. Frankly, and without trying to go with, okay, I want to slam Eve for X, Y, and Z. Because like I said, I'm trying to do my best this whole thing. I spent 9 hours in a car thinking. I don't think the he said, she said of him and Eve actually matters, because there's so much more to go on. So besides that, is there anything else that, while you're here on mic, that you want to share?
Well, you say besides that, and
I know it's like, besides, how was
besides
the play?
The fact that I am an abuse survivor. Yes.
And it is a tricky world we're in, where it's like you and Eve are kind of accusing each other of very similar things. And if it was just Eve making a blog post and everyone rallying around her, I'd be so much more skeptical of all of it. Right? Sincerely. As someone who has been on that side of things, who has lost friends that I thought were friends, who was banned from parties that I was excited to one day go to someone who's like lost things and friends because of what a partner put on Facebook, and everyone decided to believe them instead of even asking me any questions. I would totally appreciate if that was a situation. If we didn't have at least a half dozen, like about a half dozen women sharing fairly full testimonials of their stories that have overlapping similar patterns of behavior, I would totally be on board with like, hey man, this seems like it's not fair, and I would like to hear your side of a story. But I'm not interested in what's between you and Eve for the same reasons I tell my parents, don't tell me about shit with money. I don't want to hear that you paid her this and she wants more. I don't want to hear that dad didn't cut you this check. I don't want to hear that stuff. Mm-hmm. The main and again, if you didn't co-write the fucking polybook, I would probably be not interested in speaking with you today. Because I'd be like, well, that's just some guy who's got some relationship drama I don't want to hear about. But there are all these other women involved too. Mm-hmm. And so that's where my interest came in. I was like, what happened?
I got a question for you now.
Please.
Would it change your impression of all of these other women have all of these stories to know that somebody was paid to trawl through 20 years of my online life to send messages to basically every woman who has ever interacted with me, even if the only interaction was she commented once on my blog?
Are we talking about Louisa?
Yes.
Now, the payment thing is interesting because this isn't the first time you've brought up people were paid, which I wasn't going to bring up. But if you want to bring that up, there was you at one point also separate from Louisa, you at one point suggested that the women sharing their stories were paid.
Yeah.
Do you still believe that that's true?
I don't believe that that's true. But if I may finish.
I just want to I want to clarify that.
No, I believe. So Eve actually talked on a blog about, or on a.
I didn't listen to it, but I think Dawn Sarah's podcast or something like Sex Gets Real or whatever.
Yeah. Talked about, I've spent $10,000 getting these stories.
Did she say exactly that?
Yeah, I believe that she said something to that effect. Yes,
that's something I've never thought I'd want to listen to Dawn Sarah's podcast, but you know what? Now I would.
But she said something about I've paid a lot of money, and I believe she said something like $10,000 to get these stories, and I started getting these emails from like these people who were like, do you know somebody named Louisa? Because she says she's a journalist, and she messaged me to ask me if I have anything bad to say about you. And people actually sent me some of the emails. And like in one case, the only interaction I'd ever had with this person, like we'd never met. The only interaction I'd ever had was she commented on a blog post.
She claims that she interviewed you at one point, I believe.
No, I mean the person who I got this email from.
Oh, I apologize. I thought you meant Louisa.
Yes.
I apologize.
Louisa has not interviewed me about any of this stuff.
Not this stuff. She said that you guys had an interaction, like whatever.
Yeah, we've had an interaction in person.
So your beef would be that Louisa was paid to do some labor.
No, my beef was that Louisa was paid to construct a specific result. That she was not looking for what is Franklin like in person. She was looking for how can we cast the story so that it looks like Franklin has this long history of abusing people.
Is it possible? Is it possible that even if Eve ultimately wanted some sort of result, is it possible that Louisa went in with, I'm going to just put these women's stories on here? And she also did go through a lot of your posts, and she did find some things.
Is it possible? I can't say what was on her mind. Right.
You just did. You just said she's trying to get a particular result. So
yes. Let me finish. Okay. Let me finish. I can't say what's on her mind, but I can say that if her overriding concern was to get as rigorous and accurate a story as she possibly could, I believe that she would have gone about it differently.
But we also can't say what's on her mind. I'm only repeating back what you just said.
Yes.
I'm trying to be fair here.
I can't say what's on her mind. I can say that looking at her actions rather than her mind, I believe that if her goal were journalistic integrity, her actions would probably be different.
This line of thought originated from, you asked me, would it change my mind if I knew someone was paid to collect these stories? Because if at the end of the day I believe that these are multiple people not being paid to share their stories of their interactions with you, then that doesn't really change much. I did ask her some questions. I hit her up privately and I asked her things like, did you find people who didn't have bad things to say, things like that. She's like, and she did admit that like those types of people were not included in the blog because it was a survivor pod. And I was like, okay, well, that's how I know it's not journalism, but that doesn't mean that these stories aren't true. Like at the end of the day, it's like Eve, I believe, does not have the purest of intentions. I don't believe you got the purest. I think there's some shit going on with y'all. And like I said, child of divorced parents, I just choose to be skeptical of both sides. I think that's fair for me to do. Louisa, I don't know her intentions. She seemed to at minimum want to put these stories of these women out there. You know whose intentions I do believe? I do believe the intentions of the women who shared their stories. Do I, the extent to which I sympathize with the severity of things, or that I agree that X, Y, or Z was as egregious, varies from story to story and situation to situation. So like, you yelling at her on the phone, I'm like, that happens sometimes. Other things, maybe, skeptical. It made me go like, take pause. There's a lot of times I was reading, actually, in fact, thinking about, where do I do similar things in my relationships? What don't I do? What should I be looking out to make sure I don't do? Mm-hmm. There's definitely a lot of that. But like I said, it doesn't change anything that to know Louisa was paid, because at the end of the day, I still believe the women whose stories were, because there was audio. And so at a minimum, the women that where there's recorded audio, I go like, I can hear them. So I can at least work with that. That's why I tried my best driving 9 hours up here to think about, what if I take Eve out of this? What if I take this out of this? And what if I just be like, there seems to be a pattern behavior from a guy who wrote books suggesting a different pattern behavior. That's where I came from it. That's what interested me in this. So that's where
that seems reasonable. And I will say that it's also possible, like I said, show me 2 sentences from the purest man and I'll find something in there to hang him. Sure. It is possible to construct patterns if that is your goal, whether intentionally or not. And like I said, I do believe that there are things that are in those stories that are just factually incorrect. They're demonstrably not true. Like, as in not, maybe it didn't happen that way, but no, it factually never happened. And one of those is actually Amber's story. And and
that sounds like something that might be more, that might be more appropriate for what you're planning to write. Especially because Amber, read it. I don't want to get in a situation of going through he said, she said with the women whose stories they were sharing, too deeply. So, and I could tell that there's a visceral reaction to Amber's in particular. And that does sound like something you will get your chance to say as you were planning to share that. But that's a hole I don't think I'm comfortable going down, if you can be okay with that. And
it's your show.
Sure. I mean, I hope you can appreciate where I'm coming from.
Yeah, it's your show, and you can totally shut me down if you want to.
I don't want to shut down, but Amber didn't hit you, right?
But I will. No, Amber didn't. hit me. So I will say there are things that she said that are factually demonstrably false, like no gray area, flat out false.
And do you plan to be putting something out?
Yes,
about that?
I do.
So, the weird time to segue into plugs, but I guess, Franklin, if people do want to read that, if people want to follow you, if they are curious, where can they find you?
Tacit.livejournal.com.
That's Tacit, TACIT?
TACIT.
.livejournal.com. Mm-hmm. All right, man. Well, I do appreciate you coming in. I appreciate you chatting with me. I appreciate that it's not the easiest thing to go online and share at times where you could be better. I do hope that all of this will inform your future, your decisions, both in relationships and online.
I hope it informs many people's future and decisions online. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Well, best of luck to you with the rest of this. Best of luck with the novels, with your situationship. friend. That's a cute word.
She is lovely.
I may steal that term one day.
Yeah.
And if you would, what I would appreciate if you would say goodbye to everybody.
All right. Well, it's been interesting. Goodbye, everyone.
The Man Whore Podcast is sponsored by HotMovies.com. Try out some ethical, paid-for porn for free with none of those hidden fees or secret subscriptions when you sign up at HotMovies.com and use the promo code MANWHORE. So that's my conversation with Franklin Veaux, everybody. You decide. You decide if you want to do a deep dive into all this stuff or not. I don't blame you if you don't want to. There's a fucking lot to read. He just might be a really shitty partner. He also might not be. I don't know. I haven't dated the guy, but I'll tell you this. I probably won't. I want to clarify something that, the money thing that came up. He seemed really fixated on the fact that like someone's being paid here. He mentions a $10,000 figure, and that's fair. We should take a look at that. The $10,000 number, by the way, came from an episode of Sex at Dawn. That's a DAWN. Dawn Sarah ain't a fan of me. You can take a look. I reached out to Louisa's team. Louisa being the person who put together this big tome of who did all the testimonial interviews, stuff like that. No one really knows where Dawn got that $10,000 figure. In our conversation, Franklin says Eve says that. Actually, it turns out Dawn said that, and no one really knows where it came from. But I did think it was important to ask about the money, so I asked Louisa because you don't want it wouldn't be cool if, say, Eve was out there using these other women's stories to raise money via PayPal for her legal proceedings with Franklin, right? As far as that team can tell, Eve has gone $0 of the dollars sent via PayPal. And that the money being sent via PayPal came out to a little over $1,300. And most of that money was used for transcription costs. Which, look, transcription shit is not cheap. So I buy that. And apparently Eve actually donated $100 of her own money to that PayPal. So as much as it might be exciting for Franklin to go, money was involved. I don't know how real this is. There wasn't. But a fair concern to have. I took a look at it for you. But ultimately, that I said it in the intro. It's are we accepting the role as a leader in polyamory or not? His Quora account that is incredibly active and popular, it does still list under his name, co-author of more than 2. Are you abdicating the role or not? I think that's a fair follow-up question I would ask Franklin if Franklin was in front of me right now. One of the reasons that I didn't want to get too much into the he said, she said, especially about him and Eve, is that Eve has posted her stuff and has shared a lot and continues to about her experiences with Franklin. And Franklin has shared posts and things, as well as written a whole book called The Game Changer of his story and his tale. And I didn't want to get into he said, she said, but it was more hey, dude, you're going to write something anyway. And he said, yeah. So I was all right, then how about people can go read that if they want to hear what you have to say about your relationship with Eve, but I'm not interested in getting into that. So I have a link in the show notes to a live journal post called Breaking My Silence. And you can read that as part of what you want to take in or not. Last week in the show notes, I had links to, Louisa's, I guess we'll call it a blog for lack of a better term, and that blog has the links to literally everything you could ever want to read about this. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Franklin. I mean, enjoyed a loose usage of the term. You know what? I hope you were intrigued by and captivated by my conversation with Franklin Veaux. I know I was. As tiring as it was at times, I was I'm interested. At first, I was interested at his fall from grace as an influential community leader in polyamory. And then while talking to him, I was captivated by his dancing and his deflecting and his not taking responsibility for really much of anything significant. As always, I would love to hear your responses. I would love to hear your thoughts. The email addy is manwhorepod@gmail.com. I'm willing to try a little something. Going to lift this from Mr. Dan Savage over there. If you want to leave audio feedback, record something with your voice memo app on your phone and email me that file, and you may just hear your own voice on this show. If you were just coming here for Franklin, you're not normally a fan of me. Maybe you don't always listen to the pod. I do hope you'll follow me on the socials. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I do the things. Just search Billy Presida. I pop right up. If you want to help yourself to some Man Whore merch, head on over to the Man Whore Podcast Facebook fan page. Smash that like button. Load up your cart. This is the last time I'm going to say this, but if you need a discount on some comfy undies, head on over to topicwear.com and use promo code MANWHORE for 20% off. That's Topic, TOPIKWEAR.com. Use promo code MANWHORE. I think I've said enough words into this thing. I hope you all enjoy yourselves. I hope you're being safe. Wear your fucking mask. I don't care how uncomfortable it is. I've been running outside in New York City in like 85-degree weather with a fucking mask on for like 20 to 30 minutes at a time. You can do it too. I love you all. Stay slutty.